Okay, hello everyone and welcome to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com and I'm joined today by Tiffany Allen and Mike Marcin of Dynamic Point for a session all about creating customer and vendor self-service portals. As we get started today, please know that we do want to take your questions, and I know Tiffany and Mike will be making time at the end of the session, but you can enter yours anytime. You should see a Q&A block to the right of the main presentation window. You can use that, as I said, at any point. And without further delay, we're going to get things started. I'm going to hand control off to Tiffany Allen to begin for us. So Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much for having us today. Mike and I are looking forward to presenting to you the customer and vendor portals exclusively for Dynamics GP and NAV. Before we get started, just a tad bit of information about Dynamic Point, who we are and where we came from. Dynamic Point was founded 7 years ago specifically to build SharePoint business automation applications exclusive to the Dynamics ERP and CRM. So our management team comes up the ranks of implementing and configuring the Dynamics GP and NAV products. So we're intimately aware of the processes you're utilizing GP and NAV for, and also where there are some gaps potentially. Hence the development of our out-of-the-box products. Today, obviously, we're going to peek at our customer and vendor portals, but we also do have a requisition management application that allows you to automatically create purchase orders directly in GP or NAV, as well as an employee expense reimbursement application. And we also handle invoice or AP automation. So why portals? Today, we want to discuss how you can improve the customer and vendor touch points. I mean, our society today has really shifted to an always-on, always-connected, simple communication strategy, and that's truly the core, the basis of our portals. Plus, on top of it, I think what's key to all of us here on the line today is that it includes that bi-directional integration with your Microsoft Dynamics platform. And this is really to ensure that you can deliver ease, speed, and consistency to your customers and vendors on a go-for-it basis. So what's the justification for portals? There's really 4 key components that we see here at Dynamic Point resonate with our customers, and number 1 is demand. And it's not just millennials that are demanding it. I promise you it's not. Over 60% of customers are asking for that self-service access as reported by Forrester Research. And even beyond that, one more shocking statistic that I uncovered is that 85% of communications between a customer and enterprise organizations will be less hands-on communication. Actually, I should reword that there a little bit. It is going to be without human interaction. They are predicting by the year 2020, 85% of those customer enterprise communications will not require any human interaction. So now is the time to really think about investing in how you're going to continue to communicate with your customers, and let's do it before your competitors, right? Second component or justification for those portals really drives straight down to the bottom line. On average, it costs $5 for you to communicate with a customer via phone. You're driving that down a bit when you move it to an email communication stream, averaging about $3. But really where those savings come into play is when you can move them to a web self-service portal, you're less than 10 cents per interaction with that customer. So tremendous savings to the bottom line for sure. We also can obviously anticipate increased efficiency. What we've seen is that you can lower your customer service requests by more than 33% when you give an online communication tool. So this is really going to free up your employees' time. No longer are they going to be on the phone calls or responding to emails for those very repetitive customer service issues that can be handled through a self-service portal. The last one I want to highlight here for you is really it all boils down to feedback. Not only do customers and vendors demand it, but they appreciate it. Once you deploy that portal, you're going to watch your customer satisfaction rankings rise. We've seen that by more than 16%. So you've really got some great justification and ROI to take back in order to deploy moving forward with a portal strategy. Before we dive into the interactive demonstration today, what we want to cover is what we see as general requirements for the portal. And in this case, and part of the reason that we're doing this together today is that we see that there's a lot of overlap between the customer and the vendor portal requirements. First and foremost, people want to be the ability to see orders. That could be sales orders or purchase orders, depending on that sales or that vendor line that you're going down. They not only want to be able to view them, but in some instances edit them, and we extend that capability for you through the SharePoint portal. You have contracts and document management, and this is really a central repository for you to maintain all those business partner communications. Inventory. For some of you, this may seem like a bit of a stretch. Why would I want to expose inventory? Well, this is a great scenario for you to keep customers updated in terms of what's in stock and potentially even suggest what they may want to reorder in the near future. Payment status. Payment status is probably the one that gets screamed at for the most, right? You want to be able to extend the option for them to be able to go in and confirm what a payment status looks like and pull down all that historical information right at their fingertips, really lessening that pressure of customer service calls into your organization. Support. This is a great area where you can really streamline the initiation of a support ticket, allowing them to let you know what path of support they're requiring, and then you can ensure that you're triggering the right department within your organization for follow-up, just speeding up that communication stream. The last one I've notated here is contacts or profile management. Not only are they able to view all their information, they have the potential to edit and or add as new people are coming into the organization that need to interact with you and your organization. And the last requirement here is that it all has to be mobile friendly. That's absolutely a demand. We need to make sure that we can deliver all these requirements, not only in a desktop format, but also in a mobile friendly fashion as well. So today we'll be certain to highlight both those options for you. Now, why SharePoint? At the top here, we've discussed that here at Dynamic Point, we build all of our applications in SharePoint. And part of the reason that we do so is we're leveraging the rich functionality that SharePoint delivers. Out-of-the-box functionality that really helps us keep the cost of our products down. So first and foremost is branding. You all do not want to serve up a generic template. So SharePoint is going to allow you to customize this portal to your current look and feel using your color scheme and your logos integrated directly into the portal. Workflow. This one is really what I see as one of the very key components to the portal. In many cases, you're going to be extending data directly from GP and NAV into the portal for those customers and vendors to view. Quite often, you may want them to have the ability to edit or make comments. You may not necessarily want that to flow directly back into Dynamics. So with the workflow, the SharePoint workflow engine, we're able to trigger a review and approval process so somebody within the organization can review any feedback or comments directly from that customer or vendor before it flows into Dynamics. Next is reporting, and SharePoint is tremendous in that it allows you to expose key analytics and even publish Power BI reports through the portal. Really a dynamic way to share additional content with your customers and vendors. The next one on the second row here is content management. And I think when most people think of SharePoint, they think, okay, this is the collaboration tool. Absolutely, it certainly is, and it really goes back to, in this forum, is that central repository for you to share and store all that business relationship communication. We also have communities. I think this one will continue to evolve over time, but already out of the gate, SharePoint has standard integration with Yammer, and this is really going to allow you to provide a private social media platform already within your portal. Last one that I think really ranks right up there with workflow is authentication and user management. So this is certainly key because at the end of the day, you're going to be sharing your corporate information across the internet. And most importantly is it has to be unique, a one-to-one relationship. You certainly want to ensure you're only sharing a customer's information with that particular customer and no other. So SharePoint delivers to us various authentication methods to ensure that we can protect all that data for you. Alrighty, I think I've chatted enough. Mike Marcin, he's our man of the hour. He's going to take us through an interactive session here. If you guys will give me just a moment, we're going to switch screens over to Mike.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm going to go ahead and share.
You should have access there in just a second, Mike.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share the demo environment we have. Hopefully it's coming through momentarily.
It looks great there, Mike.
Good, good. Okay, well, thank you, Tiffany, for the overview. Just to give you an intro of what I'm going to cover today, we're going to highlight a vendor portal and go over some of the sample functionality that we have there. From there, we're going to go to a customer portal, going back to Tiffany and showing some of the mobile integration. And then lastly, we're going to put it back to me to show how a lot of this is built. The reason that's important is that these portals, what we're showing you today is obviously prepared from a demonstration perspective and is there to show you some sample scenarios. But what we've seen is a lot of what constitute a customer or a vendor portal for a given client is really unique. Based on their business process, they want to share certain information that is really unique to their business. So what we're showing you today is obviously an overview, but know that there's a lot of additional other opportunities for integration with Dynamics or just plain SharePoint functionality, depending on what it is that you're trying to share and collaborate on with your customers and vendors. Okay, so enough of the introduction. We'll go ahead and go through the vendor portal. So what I have here is just a sample vendor portal, and I am logged in as a end user here. So this is what a vendor to my organization would see when they came into the portal. A few things to highlight: the look and feel, the logo, the colors, things like that. Again, as Tiffany mentioned, that's all part of the SharePoint framework. It's all available for different branding, the ability to change the look, to change what's on the screen. All of these things are various web parts that I could close or add new ones, etc. And another thing to clarify, what I'm demonstrating today is all built on SharePoint Online, or otherwise known as Office 365. You could do everything I'm doing today either online or on-premise. So regardless if you have SharePoint on-premise or if you're an Office 365 customer, both options are available to you. Okay, so a few things. We have the toolbar going across here with the various actions that we want our vendor to do. Of course, the left-hand navigation, a little splash page of news. Maybe we're showing some project tasks. If I'm working on a project with a vendor and I want them to update status and keep me informed of where they are on various things. So you can see I have a task list here that they could obviously go update, as well as a Gantt chart. And then the last thing I have here is just a video highlighting how to use the portal. This is something we see quite often with all of our products, actually. It's very easy just to do a screencast of how to use the product and then publish that to the SharePoint page, as opposed to having someone read any documentation or whatever else. It's easier to show them on video and, quick couple-minute video, and they could get the hang of what the functionality is and how to use it. So to go through the various options here, we'll click on project tasks first. We already talked about that briefly. The idea here is that I want to collaborate with my vendor on a various assignment or a project, so this is something that we've seen quite a bit. You actually do have the ability to integrate this with either jobs or projects in Dynamics, depending on if you're using NAV or GP. What you see here is really non-integrated, just standard SharePoint functionality. So I have a job published, and they could obviously go into the various tasks, mark percentages complete, it updates the Gantt chart, sort of keeps me in tune of where they are on the project. But at this point, this is not integrating with jobs and Dynamics. I will show that a bit later where we do integrate with jobs. So I could obviously go in here and mark my percentage complete and things like that. So some standard SharePoint functionality that we've seen leveraged with vendor portals, specifically on vendors where they're working on a project for me and I really want them to keep me updated of where they are on progressing on that project. Okay, enough project tasks, we'll go back. The next area you see is contracts. Another thing that we've seen quite a bit with vendors is, I want to maintain my vendor contracts. They have expiration dates. I want them to upload new documentation, and I want some type of workflow or approval process associated to that. So that's exactly what we have here. This is just a document library with all of my vendor contracts stored to it. We do have workflow associated to this library, so if I were to go ahead and upload another document, so let's pretend that I'm a vendor and I want to go ahead and upload my new NDA because the past one expired and I obviously received a notification of its expiration. I could go ahead and upload that. As you can see, it's going to add that to the document library. And if I refresh my screen here, we should see the workflow column is going to be populated with an in progress. So what that has basically done is initiated a workflow approval process, right? And the idea behind that is we just don't want vendors uploading contracts whenever they want. We, of course, want to be aware of it, and we want to be involved in a approval process associated to it. So that's going to kick off this workflow, which will generate an email for me to review and approve. So sometimes my email takes a little while to come up, of which we could keep going. Let's see if it happens to fetch it here. If it does, I can show you. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and come back to it. And it looks like it's going to. So I'll go ahead and bring that onto my screen. First thing to note, I did get a notification of the approval workflow starting. So this is more for the person who initiated the workflow, aka the vendor, letting them know that the workflow process has been kicked off. And then the more important one that I'm interested in seeing is this one. This is the task being assigned to whoever is reviewing this vendor contract. So as you can see, I could review the vendor NDA. If I click on this, of course, it's going to open up that document in Word such that I could review it, maybe make any edits or whatever I have to do from a review perspective. So here's my NDA. Nothing too special about that. We'll go ahead and close it, pretend that I reviewed it. And then the next step, of course, is I want to either approve or reject this, right? I'm reviewing this document, and I want to go ahead and open this task. And then from there, that's going to connect me directly to the SharePoint task that's associated to this, which you could actually also manage in SharePoint, but we find it more convenient for people to do it in Outlook, given obviously that everyone seems to be in their email quite a bit and the integration with mobile phones. So I can see this has been requested by me. I have the ability to comment on this review and say, the new vendor document looks good. Thanks or something. And then I could approve it, reject it, request some changes on it, or reassign it. If I need someone else on my team to maybe take a look at this document because maybe it's outside of my expertise or it's not for my given area, I could go ahead and reassign this task. So we'll go ahead and approve it, and we'll say that that document looks good. Now the vendor will get a notification, of course, that this document has been approved. So they will automatically be updated of its status. So if I go ahead and go back to my library, again, this takes a second or two to upload, so if it doesn't do it immediately, we could come back to it, but you will see that that contract will go to an approved state after the task has been completed on it. So sometimes it takes a little while, and we can most certainly come back to it. But it will, there it goes. So it went to approved. As you can see, 3 minutes ago, status has changed to approved on the NDA. The vendor now receives notification that their document has been approved. So again, one example. We'll go ahead and close out of that and keep moving. But that's yet another example of how we've seen these portals used to collaborate with vendors. The idea that I have several documents with them. I want those managed. I want expiration dates. I want workflow associated to it. And I want the vendor to upload that to me. I don't want to have to give them a call and pester them. Inventory, we're actually going to defer. Strangely enough, we have seen customers want to expose inventory to vendors. The specific scenarios, it wasn't intuitive to me why they would want to do that either. The specific scenarios that we have seen is that the vendor is managing their own component of inventory such that they replenish it on behalf of the customer. So that's where that came up. But I will defer that till we get to the customer portal. Reporting, as Tiffany mentioned, SharePoint has a lot of different reporting options. So I actually have that reporting tab over here. We'll go ahead and open it. This is a supplier quality analysis report. Something, again, that we have worked with customers here that they want to expose various information to the vendor. Maybe they want this vendor involved in their own analysis of either defects or late deliveries or things like that coming from Dynamics that they want to integrate to this is actually a Power BI report developed in Excel that has been shared back to SharePoint. So the idea here is that, they're sort of in charge of their own performance with the customer. They can manage delivery dates, defects, other things that I would be extrapolating from Microsoft Dynamics and sharing that directly with the vendor. And as you can see, as I'm clicking on different things here, all this information is live. It is pulling directly from the data source being dynamic. So if I change any of these things, it will update the interface live there. Okay, enough of the reporting. Next, purchase orders. The scenario that we see for exposing purchase orders is maybe I want the vendor to have access so they could see all their various POs. And in addition to that, maybe I want them to be able to print it, maybe manage even certain components of their POs, such things as updating the status of it, of when it's expected to ship, delivery dates, things like that. So the nice thing is that information can be pulled into SharePoint and exposed to the vendor. The other thing is we could obviously have security on these various fields of what they can change or can't change or things like that. But maybe I want, if a vendor is for any reason delayed, I want them to be able to come in here, update the promised receipt date, and save it. And therefore they're informing me that there's been a delay, and I want to be notified of that. So as before, of course, this is not just going to happen in a vacuum. I am going to receive an email on this, but I will keep going because, again, that may take a second or two to come in, but we will see an update associated to that. We also have updates on the customer portal, too, as well, so we could see those. But we'll keep going for now. The other thing for the purchase order side is the ability to print my PO. So as opposed to creating a separate report, we obviously want to expose the one that's already been modified for us in Dynamics, right? So the idea there is I've already customized that one. I'm already using that one. So if I actually click the Print PO button, this is a call to the Microsoft Dynamics PO. So there's no need to create a separate one or customize one or maintain one separately for SharePoint. It's all automatically coming directly from Microsoft Dynamics. So again, there's only one source of information there. So that's purchase orders. Again, the ability to update them, print reports, some workflow associated to it. The next is payment status. Oh, as promised, my email just came through, so I'll go ahead and stop really quick and bring up that. So this is showing, this has been generated by the item that I just updated. So this is a SharePoint alert here telling me that the promised receipt date has now been updated to the 5th. So again, highlighting to me that a vendor has been in the portal, has updated something, so maybe I need to take an action on this or communicate with someone on my team that what was expected on the 4th is now going to be on the 5th, and maybe we have to move delivery dates and things like that. So we'll close out of email and then go back to payment status. So payment status, again, like the other areas, this is integrating information from Microsoft Dynamics, so it's pulling all of the open invoices for this given vendor such that they could see them. So they can see the due dates associated to them as well as the original amounts and things like that. Of course, they could click on any of these. The idea there is that they know sort of what's coming to them, what to do, and then we have just the opposite of that, of course, on the customer side of them knowing what's been open and what's been resolved in any open credit memos, et cetera, such that you're exposing that directly to them. So that is it for the vendor portal. So that concludes our overview there. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this one and open up our customer portal. Again, you're going to see a lot of similarity here as far as what we've integrated on the customer PO, just because there is typically a lot of similarity as far as, obviously not POs, it's sales orders and things like that. But often we see a lot of the similar type information being shared either with vendors or customers. So this is the customer portal. Again, as far as the look and feel, very similar, maybe some unique branding specific to a customer site. Again, we're having task lists coming through. The orders, we're going to hold off on that because we are going to actually update those from a mobile phone, so I'll wait until Tiffany does that. Contracts, we already discussed the idea that as opposed to now the vendor contracts, I'm maintaining customer contracts, the same idea that they could upload them, maintain expiration dates and things like that. And then inventory, we're going to go ahead and drive into this one. We did not show this with the vendor portal. We are saving it for the customer portal. But here you can see I am pulling inventory directly from Dynamics. The idea here that the customer could see what's in my inventory. And like Tiffany mentioned, maybe, based some purchasing decisions or based on what's in stock, or maybe I'm having a discount associated to it. What you can see here is a graph coming from Power BI. So this is directly pulling from Power BI. It is a a report that has been shared to SharePoint. It is very, interactable. I can do full screen and things like that. I have all the normal social media sharing icons if I want to go ahead and post those to any of those and share them with any of the different social media sites, as well as I could just obtain a URL for it if I want to email that to someone and share it directly with them. So a different functionality with Power BI. This is just showing what I have in stock to my specific customer. So we'll go ahead and close out of that, go back to the customer portal, and then I'm going to go ahead and pause for now, and we are going to turn it over to Tiffany. She's going to show how you could use a mobile application using Microsoft Power Apps to interact with any of these SharePoint lists, and we have a couple to highlight. So I'm going to turn it back to Tiffany, and she can highlight that, and then I'll bring it back and show you how that has updated in the actual portal itself.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Mike, so if you'll go ahead and make me presenter. Thank you.
And it should be done.
Very good. Thank you. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is share with you my mobile screen. Let's cross our fingers that I don't get any odd, strange messages during this demonstration. That's always a worry of Mike and I. So here you go. What I've launched is a Microsoft Power App. You should see it now. And you'll see all the same similar icons that you just saw before as Mike was demonstrating the desktop version of the portal. Now today, let's suppose that I'm a customer on the road, and what I want to do is update an order. I click into the orders, and I can see all my open orders today, whether it be conference tables, tables and chairs, and loudspeakers. And what I want to do is ensure that the timetables have moved up a bit on a particular project, and I want to update the requested delivery date. So as I click into the particular order, I'll see that I've got a pencil or an edit button. As I hit that edit button, I am able to make updates to this particular order, and I want to change that requested delivery date to January 10th. I'll select 10th, click OK in the bottom corner, click my check mark here, and I'm submitting that request at that stage. So as I go back out to the main sales order screen, oops, I went a little too far, you'll even see on the summary screen that my updated requested date has changed to January 10th. In a moment, since we don't want to bounce you back too much here, Mike will take us back into Dynamics and show you how it's actually flowed directly into Dynamics as well. But while I'm on that mobile view, I've also added a new person to the team, so I want to ensure that she is in the communication stream moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead into Manage Profile, and I see all the different employees that are currently assigned and have access to the portal. In this case, I want to add a new employee, so I'll hit that plus mark, and let's go ahead and add somebody. We'll give them a number. We'll add my grandma today. Why not? We'll give her a last name. She's with Test Company for today's case. Get her phone number in here. Some address information. Complete done. And I'm going to hit that check mark in the top right-hand corner, and that is submitting that updated information back into SharePoint and Dynamics. You'll see down here at the very bottom that we've added Marna Wright at this stage, but we'll flip it back to Mike, and he can confirm just as much inside the desktop application of the portal as well as inside of Dynamics. So if you'll give me a moment, we'll flip it back to Mike. Alrighty, Mike, you should be all set there.
Thank you much.
Show them how it worked.
All right, keep your fingers crossed. So here we are back in the customer portal. And the first thing that Tiffany did on the mobile device, so the Power App, was update the orders. So we'll go check the status of that. And Tiffany, you're going to have to refresh my memory. I think you changed 1003, is that right? Is that the one you updated?
I changed, no, the second one to the bottom, 4003, the loudspeaker.
Okay, so hopefully that date looks like it's been updated there.
That is the date that I changed it to, the 10th, absolutely.
Great, great. So that was the requested delivery date that she's updated on the sales order. Now the second part of this is, okay, it's obviously updated the mobile application. Mobile application is talking to SharePoint, that's all great, but maybe we want that going back to Dynamics, right? So, you know, after an approval workflow and someone looking at that and making sure that change is okay, we want to actually update directly back to Dynamics with that. So if I go to my orders in NAV, this works with both GP or NAV. For the sake of picking one today, we have NAV. What it's going to do is actually open the web client. Not that you would ever, you know, display this on a portal per se, but the idea here is we want to show you what has been updated into Dynamics NAV. So this is more just to confirm that everything is working.
And you're looking for 104003, right there in the middle.
Okay, 4003. And you updated the requested delivery date to 110, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So as you can see, that sort of went full circle, right? She updated it from the mobile device, which is really talking directly to that SharePoint list. Typically, we would have a workflow associated to this that would go for an approval process. In this case, we just have it going directly into NAV. So let me go ahead and, I didn't mean to do that. I closed out my session. Bear with me here. Clicked the wrong button and closed out my customer. All right, so we'll have that up. Okay, the next thing she did was added a contact directly from the Power App device. So I'm going to go ahead and go into contacts. And she added her grandmother, Marna. So you can see this is new, indicated by the asterisk, that a new contact has been added to my SharePoint list. Now, in addition to that, you have the ability to integrate this with other things, right? So contacts are interesting, obviously, from a Microsoft Dynamics perspective and keeping those up to date. But maybe if I have a new contact aboard, I want to go ahead and integrate that with something like CRM and include them in like a new welcoming packet or include them in future communications. Or maybe I just want a notification that when a new contact is added, they need to be approved. The next part actually uses Microsoft Flow, which gives you, if anyone's not familiar with Flow, it basically gives you the ability to integrate various products from Microsoft, including SharePoint, with such things as email approval, Dynamics CRM, etc. So if I actually look at my email, I can see I have just received one here requesting my input for a new contact has been added, and then I could either choose to approve or reject this addition. So you can see this is being generated by Microsoft Flow. And in this case, I'll go ahead and approve the addition, which we'll go ahead and update that. So thank you for your response. Approved has been registered. So that's just one simple example of how you could use Flow. We've also used it to integrate, if you're using Dynamics, like I said, CRM, that becomes a new contact or receive marketing material, given that they were previously not known with the customer, but now they are, and you want to include them in future communications. So a simple example there. So really from a functionality perspective, that covers everything that we wanted to highlight from an overview of what's possible. We've talked about tasks, orders, contracts, obviously the ability to integrate it with Power Apps and mobile devices, the next part of this, I want to take you a little bit into the how this is built and really what the options are for you in extending this. A little bit later, we're going to sort of talk about what Dynamic Point brings to this picture, but a lot of what we're showing here is just the standard functionality provided by the SharePoint platform. And now that the information is in SharePoint, I could do all these things very simplistically, like set up workflows or obviously connect it to mobile devices, things like that. So I want to briefly show you a little bit of the building blocks of what you have available at your disposal now that the information is in SharePoint. So the first, since we're already on the topic of the mobile device, we'll go ahead and open up Power Apps. So by no means is this intended to be a training session on Power Apps, but it's just to highlight some of the functionality in what we've shown you today and how it's working. So you can see here I have the Dynamic Point Customer Portal. I could go ahead and click on that, which basically opens it in a preview mode, so I could actually interact with it just like Tiffany did directly from her mobile device. So this is just Power Apps running on my computer. But let's say that we want to go ahead and edit it. And the reason we want to do that is to really show you how easy these things are. All of this was developed without code. It's really just a WYSIWYG where you could drag and drop the various controls to a mobile device and share that directly with your customers. So, you know, as you could figure out, there's a lot of options as far as tailoring these mobile devices specific, again, to your needs there, because what we found out is often what a customer wants to share on this portal varies based on their business process or what they're manufacturing or distributing. So here you can see the various screens that we've developed. And in those screens, you can see here I have options for layouts. I could obviously change the fields that are put on these. So here's the fields that's been mapped to in the SharePoint list. And you know, all of those are very changeable, right? So if I wanted to go ahead and change this to a different field, you know, all these are just drop downs and they're querying directly from that SharePoint list. So again, no coding, very simplistic. We have a detailed screen here showing again the review of the sales order. You know, have our logo on it, a little bit different presentation. And then we had some edit screens associated to the contacts, things like that. So again, this is not intended to be a training session, but these are, again, all of these sort of tools that are available to your disposal now that this information is in SharePoint. I could connect it to Power Apps. I could do all these things with my Office 365 subscription. So enough of the Power Apps. The next aspect that we showed was some of the analytic capabilities. So on one of these sessions here, I have open Power BI. And what this is all the various reports that I've developed with the portal. Again, Power BI is provided both on Office 365 as well as you could actually develop all these reports using Excel on premise, and they could connect to SharePoint list, and then you could publish them to SharePoint. So whether or not you're preferring the Office 365 model or the on-premise, everything that you could see could be accomplished either way, either using Excel on premise or Office 365 online, which I'm using today. So here's my inventory by description. This was the simple report that I showed you previously. I could do such things as edit this report. I could change the look and feel of it. One of the things you have the ability to do is publish it, which is what I did. So you can see this publish it to the web is actually giving me the ability to go ahead and share that with SharePoint or publish it back to SharePoint. We could do various filters, etc., things like that. All that is capable with this, Power BI interacting directly with SharePoint lists. So you have a lot of capabilities here of things that you could do. If I click to edit the report, you're going to see the view change here a little bit. It's going to bring open my report builder. And with this, I have the ability to sort of change the bar chart. Maybe I want it to go horizontal as opposed to more vertical, do things like that, change the colors, format, etc. So I have all this sort of built-in functionality of changing this, connecting directly to the SharePoint list to pull any information, performing any filters or summaries. So it looks very similar to building a graph in Excel, and then I could share that directly back to either a web page or in this case, I've published it obviously to SharePoint. So that's the Power BI component. Again, nothing really proprietary to us, just using the tools at hand. The last part that I wanted to show was Flow. So Microsoft Flow, as I mentioned, is basically the tool that allows me to integrate those various components very simplistically. There's several templates. If I were to create a new flow from template, you would see all of the standard Microsoft templates. Obviously, a lot of their products are there, including Dynamic CRM. But there's also a lot of other, social media, as well as popular apps in today's world, such as Facebook or Yammer or Twitter, etc. So you could integrate what you're seeing with, SharePoint lists to various platforms. See, I have a pretty simple one here, send SharePoint list item for email approval. Just to show you the building blocks of what this entails. I did create this from a template, so that made the construction of it even more simplistic because it was already mostly set up for me. But I see here when a new item is created, so that's obviously the new item coming from SharePoint, and I have that associated to the contact list because that's where Tiffany added our new contact. We want to send this approval email. The approval email is currently going to me. And then we have actions associated to this that if it's equal to approved, then we want to go ahead and tell the vendor who added it, or the customer, I'm sorry, in this case, that it has been approved. So you could build the email using the various variables and tell them, thank you for your submission. It has been approved by our team. So, again, the options here are really endless. This is a very simplistic one, but you could get very, either more complex or add more functionality based on your need. And all of these tools are just there for you, and they natively hook up with SharePoint lists. So the last thing, I'll go ahead and close out of all this, that we wanted to show is how do I get this information into SharePoint? Because everything I'm showing you today is really what do I do with it when it's there. I could build graphs, I could have customers and vendors update information, I could use it for mobile applications. The last part of this is like, okay, well, how do I get it there? And to demonstrate that, we have a sample list here called jobs. So this is just a blank SharePoint list that obviously has not been populated. And I'm going to bring open the admin panel. So this is the admin panel, and we're actually going to do the mapping between what we want to take from Dynamics. In this case, again, I'm using Dynamics NAV, and I want to go ahead and update that directly to SharePoint. So I could do all these things that we just discussed. So you can see I have a new one here saying jobs to SharePoint. Go ahead and save that. And like any simple integration, I have a sort of source, obviously being Dynamics NAV in this case. It is using the OData Web Services, and I do have a filter here for a given customer. And then it is being mapped to SharePoint. So obviously I have my connection to Office 365 here, again using the authentication. And the last part, of course, is the mapping between the two. So I have my source system being Dynamics NAV. I have the destination being SharePoint. In this case, it is not a bidirectional one. It's only going one way. Obviously, you could have bidirectional. And then a mapping of the fields that I want to expose. So you can see I could hide certain things, make them not included at all, or maybe I only have them as being visible and something that a user cannot edit. So we're going to go ahead and go back to this, and I'm going to click on the Run button. So everyone keep your fingers crossed and make sure this works. But what I should see here is that this is going to run, and what it's going to do is get the information out of Dynamics NAV in this case, but like I said, just as easy could be GP. Take it based on my filter of a given customer and push that directly to my SharePoint list. So it says 7 inserts occurred. So that's good news. If I go back to my list, of course I see nothing, but if I hit trusty refresh, I should see all those jobs have been pulled to SharePoint. So that gives you the idea of what's at hand here. It's really the synchronization between the two. And then, of course, if I wanted this to do updates, I would make it a two-way synchronization. So if I updated anything, it would go back to Dynamics after being approved by some workflow. So that was it for the demonstration. Next, we wanted to go ahead and put it back to the PowerPoint, and had a few more slides here, and then I'll hand it back to Tiffany and Jason.
Perfect, Mike. We've got about 15 minutes, and we do have a handful of good questions queuing up, so sounds good.
No problem. I'll be quick. So just again, a highlight, Dynamics, people ask us, does it have to be online? Does it have to be on-premise? And really, the capability that we're using to integrate the two is those web services, and they're available for both. So the good news here is, we're starting with information from Dynamics, and regardless of how you have it deployed, the web services are available to us. The second thing that we have developed is, in our sample today, it's a very simplistic demonstration that we were only looking at a portal for a given customer. But the reality of it is, as we all very well know, is that we have many customers in life or many vendors in life. So we want to bring them into that given portal, but we only want to expose the information that's pertinent to them. And this is what Dynamic Point has really developed, because so much of what I showed you today is already available using the tools offered by SharePoint. But what we have developed is the integration with Dynamics in SharePoint such that specific information for given vendors is being displayed, and we are using the security model provided by SharePoint to filter it. So if I log in as, vendor A, I'm not seeing the POs for vendor B, and that's really what we brought to the table as far as enabling these portals with SharePoint. The second part of it, of course, is that's going to SharePoint, and as we mentioned, it could be on-premise or Office 365, and customers or vendors are the obvious examples, but we have done it for other areas such as employees. And then once all that information is in SharePoint, all of those tools that I demonstrated or highlighted today become available to you, such things as the mobile views, which are native with SharePoint, the approval workflows, notifications, Power Apps, Flow, Office integration, Power BI. Really the list goes on. Those are the ones we highlighted today, but now that I have that information there, I could use all these standard provided tools to enhance my user experience. So that's it. That's really the summary of how it all works and how we, brought it together into, a usable product that is out of the box as far as integrations. And then, a lot of what we offered there is people want to integrate additional information. And based on our framework, we could easily add that. So that's an overview of our architecture. And I will turn it back to Tiff and Jason for questions.
Perfect. Thanks,
All right.
Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
So Tiffany, I know that several questions have come in already, and I think we can start taking those for anyone in the audience who hasn't yet entered their question. Please do that now and get your question into the list that we have here. I think one question that we could probably consolidate down from a few people, sort of a common one, is asking about licensing requirements for both the Dynamics NAV or GP and on the SharePoint side. Do you want to take that first?
Yeah, that's a great one. So as you said, there's sort of three, there's a couple aspects, right? There's the Dynamics and then there's SharePoint. So I guess there's two things that come into play. One, as far as the integration with Dynamics, all of the information and communication that we're doing with Dynamics is going over web services, and it's all being done as a single user. So there is a need for a single user that is used for this integration, but of course we're not licensing every customer or vendor that comes into the portal because that would not be sustainable. So really you only need one license from the Dynamics perspective. On the SharePoint side, the nice thing about SharePoint is anyone that's outside your organization, which customers and vendors usually are considered external users. Those do not require additional licenses from Microsoft. You could actually have unlimited number of external users. So you obviously need licenses for the employees within the organization that would be administering the portal, maybe putting new content up, changing the look and feel and things like that, but that's usually a small subset of people. And then for all the external users, those are provided, free of charge in an unlimited fashion. So you can invite those external users and there's no need for any additional user licenses.
Okay. The next question, are we able to publish purchase quotes from NAV for suppliers to price it and then update NAV?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I showed today obviously was purchase orders, purchase quotes. We have seen that in the past. Actually, the web service for that is almost identical. So it's very similar to show that. And then to update it and add whatever information you're trying to capture. So maybe you're trying to get them to upload some specifications or some attachments as well as provide pricing. Usually we see that submitted for workflow. So there's an approval process which that goes to like a contract administrator. And then upon approval, that gets submitted back and updates Dynamics, either NAV or GP. So we absolutely have seen that before. Today's example, of course, is featured purchase orders, but we have seen quotes as well.
All right. Does a customer have to own Office 365 licenses or Office on-premise in order to use your product?
Well, you need SharePoint, and I guess the short answer is you need SharePoint in some fashion, and there's different ways you could get that. Obviously, 365 is what I showcased today. You could also purchase the on-premise version, and on the on-premise version, there's sort of the quote-unquote free version, what's called Foundation. I say quote-unquote free, it's actually included with Windows Server. So if you have a Windows Server license, then you could get SharePoint Foundation with that. So that's most certainly one option that you could get this up and running without the need for additional licenses. As far as your answer to Office, you don't really need any of the Office applications. Everything I showed today, none of it was really depending on Office itself. But at some point, you do need SharePoint because it is the platform. So that could either be from the Foundation version, which is the one that's included with Windows Server. It could be the paid version on-premise, or lastly, it could be the online version, either part of 365 or just direct as what's known as SharePoint Online if you don't want to purchase the other functionality that comes with Office 365. You could actually buy SharePoint directly.
All right. Somebody asks, does the GP client need to be the web client in order to update sales orders?
Good question. We're not actually using the web client, right? Well, I take that back. I did bring open the web client just for the sake of showing what was updated in Dynamics. That was just more for the sake of demonstration. You don't really need the web client, nor would you expose that to customers or vendors. So the part of that we're using either from GP or NAV is the OData Web Services. So that component is actually separate than the web client itself. You can obviously expose the web client on SharePoint, but the challenge there is now you're licensing all these users and you're basically bringing them into your ERP system and giving them the functionality offered by the web client. Usually, which is not, people don't want to do that. They want to limit the functionality and offer a very limited subset as opposed to giving them, a true user license to come into their system. So the web client is not needed. I did bring it up today just to show you what was updated back in Dynamics, but for usually that's never the case. You would never expose the web client directly to customers or vendors.
Okay, and can you describe in more detail the connection with Dynamics GP? Does it use web services also, and are there any version requirements?
Yeah, good question. It does use web services. So web services have to be up and running. They come with Dynamics GP. So the good thing is they're not buying them extra, but they do need to be installed. As far as versioning, I think the first version to use web services, don't quote me on this, I think was 10 is when they came out. So that was quite a long time ago. So you'd have to be newer than 10. And then there is that additional install that is included with the media as far as just setting up web services. So like I said, it does come shipped with the the standard CD or the download, I should say. It's not something that you have to purchase extra. So if you're not using it, then you could either install it or it's something that we often do as part of an implementation as we'll install the web services.
And someone asked sort of the same question for NAV. What version of NAV is required for this?
Yeah, so NAV came out with their web services back in 2009 was the first version. So anything above from that is fine. Because prior to that, there was no web services available.
Someone wants to know what the name of that cloud connector tool is that you were using.
Good question. So that is something that's available actually from the SharePoint store. It's called Layer 2. That is one that we use for simple integrations, and you can most certainly use it for the sake of creating a sample portal for one customer. The challenge with it and the difference between that and using our own integration is the security, right? Is that it would bring information all to one site, and that's good for setting up a single customer or a separate customer site for each portal user, if you will. But what we typically use is our own integration tool that we talked about, our synchronization service, that in addition to syncing the information, we also apply security to it such that certain users can only see certain information. But it is Layer 2, and it is available from the SharePoint store.
All right. For contract management, does that only include workflow approval, or does it have any relationship with purchase orders?
It can. I guess it can have a relationship to purchase orders. Usually contracts are sort of above a PO, if you will. I shouldn't say that always, but usually you think of contracts being like NDAs and consulting agreements that sort of cover a lot of purchase orders, so it's more at a vendor level than a PO level. But you can most certainly do approval, if the contract is specific to a given job with a vendor or a purchase order with a vendor. So you could do it at the PO level. Typically we see it's more of a overarching contract, right? It's something like an NDA that I could do several POs and several projects with the vendor, and they're all covered under that same contract. But either way, you could essentially achieve the same thing and have that approval process in the portal.
Okay. How easy is it to add customizations post-deployment in case new screens or new integrations or new reports need to be added to SharePoint?
It's typically pretty easy. Usually the method for doing it is, all of those web parts have separate security associated to it. So we could easily introduce functionality to a page and not share it with everyone, or maybe you just want to share it with super users on our side or admins, things like that. So usually what we see is the portal will obviously continue to be up. We'll introduce new functionality, but just not expose it to the end users yet until it's tested and been approved by the business. And then we basically switch just security on that so all the portal users can now see it. So it's pretty simplistic. You could either do it on a separate site if you want to, but usually we see it all done on the same site, and we're just introducing that functionality. But by limiting the permissions, we're not we're sort of controlling who could see it until it's been fully tested and approved by the business.
All right, great. Well, we have one more question here, so why don't I make a final call for questions. I also just want to note, if anyone wants to just quickly request a follow-up for Beyond today, you should see a little media viewer block on the right. If you wanted to fill that out, that will go right to Mike and Tiffany if you did want to schedule a separate call or anything. So yeah, the last question we have here for right now is, well, it's really kind of two parts from a reseller perspective. Do you have resellers in the UK, and can you talk at all about how resellers license Dynamic Point, excuse me.
I will let Tiffany take that one. Tiffany, you there?
Sure, I definitely am. So we certainly appreciate and love to work with resellers. You often understand a customer's requirements, obviously, from implementing the application, GP or NAV. So we welcome that opportunity and certainly extend margin to those customers or to those partners. So happy to talk online with you specific to those arrangements. I look forward to the opportunity.
Okay, well, with that, we are going to start wrapping up. We have recorded today's event, so we'll be sharing a link to that for anyone who had registered, so please be on the lookout for that in the next few days. Tiffany, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today and for presenting and answering so many questions.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jason. Have a great afternoon.
All right, yeah, you too, and thanks to everyone in the audience for the questions. With that, we will conclude today's event. Have a great day, everyone.